Joining us now to discuss, political analyst, author of the Great American Political Trivia Challenge, Rich Rubino. Rich, great to have you, and always great to get your historical insights on all of this. You know, we do have some new numbers here. 45% of Americans say Republicans are responsible for this shutdown, 33% pitting the blame on Democrats. But to note, 43% describe themselves as very concerned about the shutdown, and that's up from 25% when all of this started. So how concerning do you see these numbers being for Republicans?
I think it's very concerning for Republicans because there is precedent for Republicans really losing politically on this. You can go back to 1995, 1996, when Newt Gingrich and the Republicans were essentially portrayed as the losers. Bill Clinton had lost 52 seats in the House of Representatives in the 1994 midterm elections. By 1996, in part because of the way he handled the government shutdown, he was reelected by about 7 points. Donald Trump in 2018 with the government shutdown, I think lost a lot of that politically. The Democrats landed up picking up 40 seats in the House of Representatives, and Nancy Pelosi became the U.S. House Speaker. So I think that the optics are very bad on this, and I think that is incumbent on the Republicans, whether you side with them politically or not. From a purely cold, calculated political perspective, they seem to be losing here.
Yeah, and Republicans are making the argument that, Democrats are forcing their hand to use the nuclear option, get rid of this filibuster. Do you believe that's a message that's resonating with voters? What do you see as the greatest implications of this move? You've heard the president say it's time to go nuclear.
Yeah, well, the filibuster, I think that's kind of a two-inside baseball. It's something that I don't think the average American voter, when they're looking at, can they put food on their tables, looking at how the economy is. They're not really looking at something that they view as archaic, although it has a lot of direct effects on them. I think it's kind of too obscure, if you will, for people to be voting on the filibuster. But that being said, it is an interesting dynamic within the Republican Party. There's a real chasm here because Donald Trump, who's talked about the idea of the nuclear option, meaning essentially that you can bring something up to a vote with 51 votes, rather than with 60 votes. He thinks there's a divide in the Republican Party. John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, seems to be stalwart against this. Senators like Roger Marshall, very conservative from Kansas, very much an ideological ally of Donald Trump, very much says that this is a non-starter. Even Mike Johnson, although he doesn't have plenary authority on this, being in the Speaker of the House of Representatives, not the Senate, he's voiced his incredulous attitude toward this. So this would be really a very rare divide, if you will, in the Republican Party between the institutionalists in the United States Senate and the president.
Right. And what happens when the balance of power changes? That's a big question and a concern for Republicans as well. I wanted to ask you, we have some upcoming elections many say could very well serve as a bellwether for the midterms. Where are you focusing specifically and why?
Yeah, it's very interesting. New Jersey and Virginia, invariably, you have a scenario almost always that the party in power, the party that holds the presidency, loses the governorship of Virginia, the governorship of New Jersey. Now, Virginia, there's never an incumbent up in Virginia because Virginia is the only state in the entire republic that has one term limit. You can serve on consecutive terms, but you can only serve one consecutive term. So that means it's always up for election. And usually, generally speaking, whether it was you can go back to the Democrats like Jim Florio losing back in 1994, for example, or in 1993 elections, for example, when Bill Clinton was president. Bill Clinton became unpopular. The Democrats ended up losing. Barack Obama became somewhat unpopular in 2009. The Democrats ended up losing. It's almost invariable that the party loses. So for the Republicans, what they need to do is they need to somehow win at least one, either New Jersey or Virginia. And what happens if they win one of these two seats, it becomes a recruiting tool for the party and it says for a lot of donors that are potentially on the sidelines that that we potentially could do a lot better in the midterm elections if you give us money for 2026. Contrary-wise, on the Democratic side, I think that they would say if we can win these two races, that means we have a very good chance of becoming hegemonic and becoming in control of both the House and the Senate in the 2026 midterm campaigns.
Well, it certainly does bolster that pitch, wins there, no doubt about it. Rich Rubino, always great to pick your brain on issues like these. We'll be watching. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.